everyone. Jeffrey Tefertiller back with another Service Management Leadership Podcast. We have Kathy Foster with us today. Kathy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jeffrey. Thanks for having me.
Oh, so this is the week leading up to Christmas. This is going to publish. I wore my Christmas jacket. For those of you all that are listening, go to YouTube and you'll see it. It's, what did I say, Kathy, Clark Griswold-esque. Very. Very.
And I tried to match you with my my colors here. So we're coming from lunch today.
Oh yeah, so none of it's planned. All right, so you're in the ITAM space, IT Asset Management. You've been in that space for quite a few years. Now, how'd you get started down that path? Because nobody ever goes to school and says, you know, I want to be in IT Asset Management. How'd you get started?
Well, it is an interesting story. It's not something that I set out to do. My background is in business operations. I've done procurement, finance. I've done some pretty large projects. I worked with some design engineers as a financial business analyst, was in marketing operations for quite a while. And then that's kind of where the story began. Most of my career had been in semiconductors. And as those of you that know that, it's very cyclical. And during this cyclical time, my position in marketing operations was eliminated. But I did have the opportunity to find another position within the company. So that was really something I was very thankful for. And I ended up with 3 different opportunities. And they were with procurement. One was in sales operations, and the other one was to join the newly formed PMO in IT. And so I was kind of thinking it over, and I decided to go and jump into IT because it was out of my comfort zone. It was one of those areas where I was like, you know, this is something I've not done before. I've done procurement, I've done, you know, marketing operations, which is similar to sales operations. And I also had a lot of respect for the CEO at the time. And they had just formed this PMO. So my first project was to set up a software asset management process and governance. And first of all, coming into there, you know, IT was definitely a black hole for me. You know, I was always on the other end, you know, banging on their door, needing support. You know, going in, there was a lot of things I didn't know about IT. And one of those was I had never even heard of a CMDB before, right? So I was like clueless, but that was one of the things when I was asked to do software asset management was to set up the process and then use our IT service management tool to implement the process within there. So after about 6 months, we put the plans all together on paper, you know, really mapped out, you know, what's this process going to look like? How are we going to do software asset management to make sure that we're in compliance with some of our, you know, big major vendors. And after we got to the point where we had the process all developed out, we knew kind of what our workflows were going to look like. We started developing it into the tool, and we found out that it was never going to be successful because our CMDB was in really bad shape. Yeah, it was in pretty bad shape. You know, about 6 months into it, I got a little bit more comfortable with what a CMDB was and how it was used. And I had to go back to the CIO and our stakeholders to discuss the findings that said, hey, there's no way this project's going to be successful. The first one I'm given coming in brand new to the IT organization saying, hey, I can't do my job because this is broken over here. And it was met with respect. So I was thankful for that. And about 2 weeks later, I got a call from the director of infrastructure offering me a position as the first IT asset manager. So that was then to be able to get our CMDB up and in good shape and get our assets in a way where we could start doing software asset management. So for me, it definitely wasn't a role that I was out seeking. It was more of a circumstance of being, I would say, the right place at the right time, maybe, or you could say the wrong place at the right time. I'm not quite sure how you put it, but it was definitely based on, you know, the circumstance that I was put in. And I moved from the project management office and then worked in infrastructure as the IT asset manager.
Oh, wow. And so I will say that your CMDB experience is not unique. A lot of organizations struggle in that area, because they either try to take on too much and they have
Mhm.
too big a scope, or they don't have a good process to keep it up, or something like that. Everybody wants to blame the technology, and yes, that's part of it, but there's a lot of manual or human intervention that needs to make that thing do well.
Yeah, you can't really go into the tools unless you have in my opinion, unless you have your processes and frameworks and your people in place to make it work. Because if it's not working on paper, it's not working practically, then it's not going to work in a tool. So you definitely have to have that set up right in the first place to be able to get it to work in any type of tooling environment.
Oh yes, you're just going to get bad outcomes quicker and more
Exactly.
quickly, whatever that word is.
Seen that many times.
My English teacher from way back when will probably call me after, using that. So moving over into that asset space and the business side of IT, that helped you move up in the organization a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, so after I took on the IT asset management role, then it kind of got interesting too. About a year into that, we were just getting our CMDB in really good shape and getting ready to implement our software asset management process that we had built, a year and a half before that. And at that time, then our company was acquired. And I had the opportunity to go then to be part of the management team and run the office of the CIO, which is basically the back office for the CIO, where I had the ITEL and ITSM governance. I had the communication and organizational change management. We had the IT procurement and IT finance, and we, what else did I also, the PMO, yeah, we had the PMO too. So it gave me the ability then to move into that position, which I did for several years. And I had a lot of fun with that because I get to touch all of those processes and the governance and, how we run the business, which is something that I have a lot of passion around.
Oh yes, and one of the things I want to push in on, if I may, is
Mhm.
that, and this is for our viewers, people who see IT from a business lens, there are opportunities out there because every organization needs tremendous help because people get promoted by their technical expertise, and there's this big blind spot, this gap of seeing it like a business. Is that kind of your experience?
Yes, it has been my experience, although I do find that, depends on different parts within the organization, even within IT, where you have, a little bit of both, or you have people that have been promoted up technically and they need a little bit more assistance from an operational standpoint. But the last organizations I was in, I think we had a really good mix of the technical and the operational, where we're able to really run their business pretty tightly. And I'm seeing that too in the organization that I've just joined in September, which is the state of Texas Health and Human Services IT organization. So that's been a really interesting move for me, and also seeing the similarities and differences between the private and public sector.
Oh yes, I wasn't meaning that they're mutually exclusive. I was just saying that there's room for both and they each need each other.
They
And
absolutely do.
and so it's good. So you mentioned both industries.
Right.
How are they, compare and contrast on the hardware asset side and the software asset side between semiconductors, heavy engineering, heavy technical, and state government?
So state government. So now I'm in health and human services. So the state is on the front lines of the whole, pandemic that we're going through right now. They're the ones reporting and doing all the statistical analysis. They'll be working with the organizations across the state to get the, immunizations out there. And IT is playing a large role. If I do a compare and contrast, I would say that from a size standpoint, the size of the organization I'm in as a state of Texas versus the global organization I was in semiconductors, it's the same size. So the same number of employees are supporting the state of Texas to, to run the health and human services organization as we had as a semiconductor industry globally, with a global footprint. There is definitely the differences that I'm seeing, and that this kind of small in a sense, is that, I went from a buy purchase model to a lease model. So I think that there's, pros and cons to both of that. But overall, I find that the complexities are similar, and even within the new organization, I find the complexities even broader, because you have a huge user base in IT, from nurses to C-level to the finance. So you have some really different types of personas, if you will, than I saw it within my other organization, which was, you had kind of you had R&D, you had manufacturing, you had office workers. Here it's, you have very dispersed in different types of laboratory environments. You have doctors and nurses, you have other health experts, you have people out in the field working with women, infants, and children. We also have a large volunteer base. So we're having to, from an IT standpoint, also support the volunteer base from an equipment standpoint and mobility standpoint. So I think there's just a lot of complexities you don't think about when you're not in the, on the inside, and you see it from the outside. So.
Oh yeah, and so two things there. One is the provisioning of people that are volunteers and all those different with different rights, and that's a big deal. Second of all, those of you that are not familiar with the state of Texas, it's like 4 or 5 different states or demographics. The far south borders Mexico, 99% Hispanic. It's different than, let's say, the Northwest up in the Panhandle, which is mountainous, agricultural. East Texas, a little bit different. West Texas is dry as dirt with the figurative tumbleweed going by, and you're in Central Texas, which is kind of rolling hills. Yeah.
And you also think about, to your point, you think about the division, if you take from kind of the central Texas down, you're much more heavily populated. If you're going, from central kind of east down towards the coast, and you go from central up west, it's much broader country. So when you're trying to support the infrastructure there, it's definitely more challenging. And then on the coast, one of the things we have to deal with a lot is the disaster recovery from hurricanes or, weather incidents that are happening. So there's a lot of different complexities that from both parts or all parts of the state.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, take a nurse in a poor Hispanic area on the border is different than a nurse in downtown Houston or in Lubbock, Texas, out in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
Sorry for all you all in Lubbock, I apologize, but you all know what I mean.
Yes, Lubbock's a good place. My son went to school up there, so.
I understand. So those of you all that Lubbock story, I used to have a grandmother who lived there, and we'd have to go there in the summers. It was my first taste of people paving over their yards because they couldn't get grass to grow, and then they would paint it green, like to fool everyone, and it was just humorous to me.
That's right.
Oh, especially as a kid, my eyes were huge. Given the strategic nature of your group, how have you helped facilitate outcomes in this crazy world we live in? I know you've only been there since September.
Right. Yeah, so prior to joining the IT asset management team, that team did a lot of work to support the agency at the beginning of the lockdown. A large segment of the state environment was not mobile, right? It was really a work in the office. And so the mobile devices were not as prevalent as you see more in the technology fields and some of the, in the industry that I worked in before. The team had to really mobilize quickly to get equipment and applications up and running to enable employees to continue working during this lockdown time. So it was a monumentous task. On top of that, because we're in a lease environment, we have cycles, right? Where some years, your refresh is smaller and larger. Well, it just so happened that this year was also one of the larger refresh years. So on top of the large refresh, you had, trying to enable individuals to continue supporting the state, working at home, which many had never done before. So it was, a significant amount of work that was done in a short time frame, but I think it also showed the team what they were capable of, right? I think a lot of organizations can say the same thing. And this was also treated to similar other disaster recovery projects that have happened in the past, right? I talked about the fact that, we have the coast and there's a lot, we have, well, not just the coast. So we have hurricanes that come in, but we also have tornadoes, right? And the team was set up for success by the fact that they have, that disaster recovery plans in place. Of course, it wasn't, usually it's more regionally focused, not for the whole state. But I think that the team did an excellent job. I kind of came in on the back end of that, and we're continuing to support, the projects to ensure that the Health and Human Services Division can deliver the critical services to the residents of the state. We have teams on the front line of COVID reporting and implementing the vaccine deployment. So my team has to be really flexible and nimble, because I was talking about, we have, the immunizations and vaccines coming up, and we're going to have a lot of volunteers. So and also contractors and different individuals coming in to help support that on a project base. So we need to make sure that we have the devices ready, it's just in time, right? Get everything up, ready, and get those deployed so that we can support what is expected of us from the residents of the state, right? Everybody wants to make sure that they get it when they're expected to get it, and we can't do anything to hold that up. We are going to be held accountable. So it's an interesting time to be here, exciting time to be here, and also supporting something, that is really important, to the state and to the country, to get the citizens in a state where we can, get back to the new normal.
The new normal.
I don't call this the new normal. We're going to have a newer normal.
I think it'll always just keep being newer normal. But
right.
People that don't realize how big Texas is wider than it is tall. But as you go on I-35 into Texas, it's mile marker 503 and it counts down. So it's over 500 miles north and south. I don't know.
Over 900. So it's 900 east and west on I-10. Yeah.
Wow. Just think about that. That's a lot of miles for people to be up to speed and understand your assets on the life cycle, even your software and how it changes, because your software needs may change in different demographics
right.
between those. So that's quite a big undertaking. So I have found that people in the IT asset management world have great stories. And I ask this question of all the ITAM people that we have on here. Are there any you could share, even if they're cautionary tales, so to speak?
Well, this isn't a cautionary tale. I mean, there's things that are coming in. I'm still trying to figure out, the whole environment. But, we've been focused so much on the mobility and getting people, laptops and, VPN and being able to have that flexibility to work from at home or from almost anywhere. So I was really surprised the other day that I had an individual that came back to us that said, hey, I don't want my laptop anymore. I need my desktop model. And we have applications where you can, go log in remote, right, into your desktop model. But she was like, I can't run the complex data that I have, even on our high-end laptops. But there are some desktop models that we have that just have the speed and the CPUs and the RAM and the drives that we need to be able to do those complex data analytics, and those are the ones that we use in a lot of labs. So I was really kind of surprised that, hey, I don't want my, I'll give up my laptop and I'll log in remotely into this desktop. Just get me something that's not going to crash on me and, lets me do my job easier. So, sometimes we think mobile is the way to go, right? We're all kind of in this mobile environment, but, we don't always know what the needs are of our customers. We have to really listen to what they need. And again, this is one individual out of many. So, we have to listen to that and make sure that we're able to enable our employees to do the best job that they can with the right equipment. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because most of the requests I get are, I want to get, I need to get off of my desktop onto a laptop.
Oh yeah, and on that note, it's funny only because you're going to enable this outcome for her, obviously, but now she can't really change her mind while you all are in these cycles. But I get where she's coming from. Not only that, but I have found that my laptop, like my mobile phone, is an electronic leash. When I take it with me on vacation and, it's there, I got to do some work. And so, she may be tempted by that, but not as much as I am.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
And so, I call it the electronic leash, but that's I just need to call it.
Well, back in the day, when we had the Blackberries, we used to call them the Crackberries, right?
Yes.
Those that remember that device.
Yes. And now it's kind of Blackberries make a little bit of a resurgence, and the younger people don't understand why, because it's harder to play games and do social media.
Right.
That's for a different story. All right. Since you've been in the hardware asset management space and software asset management space for a while, what are some of the biggest changes that have come on the scene in your tenure?
Yeah, I think the biggest change and opportunities have been through the adoption of Agile, CI/CD, and automation to shorten the time to market, right? So it's not, it can be anything from shortening time to market to getting a report out to delivering a PC, to many different things, but really taking the approach of, continuous improvements, continuous delivery, doing things in sprints, and delivering, packages on packages until you get to that end state. And also owning, we have a lot of project management, but when you go on Agile, you really own a project for its life cycle, right? You have ownership from end to end, and you have all the right people on the team. So I think over the past years, it's really been a huge adoption in a way to get those best practices and being able to deliver our products faster. And I think that also drives quality, because you're looking at things a little bit smaller and not as broader, and you can really find some of the areas of improvement a lot faster right now.
And two pieces on that, I think, are when you do move towards an Agile, you come more iteratively towards something, which also syncs up with, and it was probably more true in your semiconductor days, the cycle times are speeding up. Those cycle times used to be pretty long, and you could plan, but now those things are spinning up, so you have speeding up faster and faster, so you have to be more iterative. Is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, that's true. It was definitely something that we had been adopting and adopted almost holistically the last few years that I was in my previous position. Even in my operations job, we had our own squads delivering, Agile, and we had our sprints, and we had the whole cadence. All of the teams were on the same sprint levels. We had a lot of, good practices of, working together and working through a backlog process and approval process through the backlog. So it really kind of helped us focus on what was important at the moment and what we were going to prioritize.
Oh, prioritization is a good thing, because resources are finite, and so got to be doing the important things. So
and then also to that, well, I was also going to say that best practices is that, you know, you always have to have the right governance and framework and processes in place, like I mentioned earlier, because you're not going to be able to use the tools to enable them. And I think that, you know, ITSM has come a long way in providing those platforms to support the already existing processes. And I won't name certain ones. There's some that are my favorite and some that are not quite as much, but these platforms really enable the ITS teams to deliver the quality products at a faster rate. So not only do you adopt these agile, you know, and continuous improvement and delivery methodologies, but to have the right tools from our ITSM vendors, it's been really helpful that they, you know, they're pushing it and driving it in some ways, which I think has helped us to get there a little bit faster than maybe we would have.
Oh yes, especially when you think of how do you handle, and it's not for us to solve, like I know the answer to this, but how do we handle change management with CI/CD?
Right.
How do we handle you know, change management with one group and one product having their own tapes and others, you know, and so, you know, things like that. And the one interesting part on that for me is each unique framework has one specific time period that they each call it something different. The time after something goes live, before you turn it over to operations, some call it early production support, early life support, warranty for the PM, project manager people, but they all need it. And I'm like, I don't care what you call it, but you all need it.
Right.
It's fun because they all argue over what to call it. I'm like, you call the dog the cat, it's okay, it doesn't matter.
Well, if somebody in the industry could like coin the right phrase that somebody would pick up on, you know, I think that they could maybe make some money out of that.
Maybe, but it's just, you know, it's arguing over nomenclature. Just, yeah, it doesn't matter.
And I think that's interesting too, when you go into a new environment too, is understanding the language, right, of what we're speaking, because it's definitely going into a different industry, you know, different acronyms, different terminologies mean different things to everybody. So you have to be careful that you understand what it is people are saying.
Oh, yeah, we need a glossary of terms in the back of everything, right?
Yes.
So what are some of the biggest changes on the software asset management side that you've seen?
I think that for me, seeing the implementation of internal license management teams, I don't think that was something that a lot of companies were doing several years back. You know, I have a kind of a limited purview, but I think that having that is something that companies were adopting more and more because they understand the complexity of the license environment and they need to rely on SAM capabilities to manage it, to mitigate their risk. I also think SAM is becoming a much more sought after skill set, and the expectation of the job goes a lot deeper than it did in the past. You know, it was one thing to, you know, the licensing models 10 years ago were definitely less complex as they are today. And to be a software asset manager, you have to really have a broad sense of all the different license models, you know, because they're expected to do the lifecycle management, but understand how to do the risk assessments, conduct the audits, understand the complex licensing structure, and then also constantly improve on the compliance position. So I think that it's definitely become a more prestigious kind of job too, you know, to be a software asset manager. I think is something that people are seeking a lot more, and the expectations definitely are getting a lot more deep.
And it's the one way you can save, it's the only place in IT, other than maybe vendor, if you want to go that way, that you can actually save your group money. Yeah, I mean, like it's the
Right.
only one that you can help, right?
Right. Yeah. And if you're not, then yeah, there you need to kind of look at where the risk is, because there's definitely must be some issues in the processes.
I know a certain insurance company that they have 5 people that are tasked with saving 7 to 10 million a year, and it offsets all their cost of, you know, their raises for all their contracts. This one group, they're tasked with offsetting all the other incremental you know, increases in the software contracts and everything else. It's really interesting to me.
It is. It's a really interesting space. I mean, I'm learning all the time, every time, about software asset management, even though I've done it for many years. There are just so many different changes and, uh, different places of the maturity model, depending on where you're at. So I like that space a lot.
Oh yeah, me too. And the complexity, that's the secret, everyone. The software vendors, software manufacturers, they put that in there for their benefit, not yours. They want as much ambiguity in there so they can take it to the one extreme while you read it at the other.
Right, exactly. Yes. Everything's to their advantage, and they make it to make where it's harder and harder every year for you to understand how they're going to be modeling something so that you can avoid the risk of paying more money.
Oh yeah, it's like the old Jerry Maguire movie, "Mo money, more money, more money."
Right.
So you talked a little bit about CI/CD. How are you all incorporating the newer emerging technologies, RPA, AI, CI/CD? I mean, there's tons out there. I don't want to, pigeonhole.
Yeah. So for me, I've just started in my position 3 months ago, maybe a little over 3 months ago, and I'm in the delivery phase versus adapting. So there are some things that the team is doing, but we're also at different maturity levels. So I think it's always a journey. You have to assess your current environment and pick the few things to focus on. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is what are some of the areas that we can really drive some efficiencies. I'm learning my new team. So right now, looking at, how we're developing a roadmap to improve and or adapt some of these technologies. I think we're using them a little bit here and there, but not formally in some areas. So that's some of the discovery that I have. Other areas of our organization are using them very well. So I'm also going to see how I can leverage the learnings from those teams to adopt within my current team.
Yes, and I think it'll grow, especially as you get into integration with your supply chain, and all of that. I mean, I think what hardware asset management looks like a little bit down the road will look totally different.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just going to be mind blowing because the hardware assets will grow because an organization has a ton of technology assets that are currently not under the purview of IT asset management, but will be. Oh, fun time. So on that note, as you peer into your crystal ball, what upcoming challenges, what upcoming new developments do you see in the hardware and the software asset management spaces?
Yeah, well, I think that's a good question. I think to your point, SAM needs to integrate further into the ITSM process framework. There's a SAM framework, there's an ITSM framework, and they meet at certain points, but I think it needs to be, thought about in a more holistic area. They're dependent upon each other, but, we always need to know what's running on all of the assets, and I need to know what assets need support for my software environment. So I think there's definitely some merging there. I think it's happening organically, but maybe not from a process and framework standpoint. From the hardware standpoint, I see that the hardware vendors are continuing to develop the self-healing devices using intelligence automation, as well as AI for machine learning. And, for the machine learning, they're using that hopefully so that they can take the data and how we're using it to make improvements to the devices at a faster pace, right? So, we are always technology hungry. We always want the better and faster next thing, but sometimes we're also reliant on the vendors to tell us what that is. So hopefully they're using the way we're using the machines to make those intelligent choices of what to deliver us in the future. Also for me, it's a little bit different, and I'm learning in the private sector, but it's government, right? And the seats change. So you have different, governors, different commissioners that come in and out. And so their strategies change. So sometimes I can anticipate that, going over the next couple of years, it's going to be a little bit challenging because the strategy could change, from one one seat to the next, depending on who is in that position. I haven't seen that, but I can imagine that, there can be some different challenges there. And so that will be, how can we set up a 5-year strategy, and take in the considerations, any changes that might come about, and be flexible there. But we're really trying to look at things, how we can do things differently, and not do status quo. We've had a lot of different changes in our organization before I came, but over the past couple of years. So it's really exciting time to be in the Health and Human Services IT organization.
Oh, I bet, especially now, right? Year 2020. You mentioned the convergence of ITSM and SAM. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about that is Jim Ryan said it on this show, but it's also true if you look at the major, and I don't want to name names, ITSM tool manufacturers, their discovery tool finds stuff for the CMDB, for HAM, and for SAM. And so there is an integration because one's not going to be more mature than the other,
Yeah, but they just started doing that over the past couple of years, because when I was doing SAM, and then I did the IT asset management, that was several years back, there was definitely a disconnect, and the connectors weren't there, and a lot of it was very manual. The APIs weren't set up, and so it was definitely a different environment than it is now, which makes it more exciting. Yeah, because you can, even if it's not built into your ITSM tool, you have, the third-party vendors now that you can connect with your ITSM tool to get the discovery and see what's in your environment.
Oh yeah, it's a crazy, great world out there. The technologies are emerging fast. When we had Jim Ryan on a few months ago, CEO of Flexera, he talked about that convergence, but he also talked about the convergence of SAM, software asset management, and cloud, where, because all these software vendors are pushing people to the cloud. Have you noticed that trend?
Yes, most definitely. I think that the trends are there, and there's pros and cons, right? So you spend less time as the receiver, having to defend your license position and true ups, but then you have the dependency on the vendor on how they change their license strategy based on usage trends. And it's usually not in your favor, right? So there's some convenience that they're selling to us as the customers, but definitely there is, some means in the background for them to continue to generate revenue. So, the more we go to the cloud, the less control we have over, our environment, and we're a little bit more at the mercy of our vendors and their licensing models. And, we know some of the big ones, they like to change how they license every year. And it's written in the contracts that they can change it any time. And, sometimes you don't even know about it till it comes time to an audit, right? Oh yeah, well, we changed this 3 months ago. Didn't you notice?
Too bad.
You didn't go read the cliff notes.
Too bad. And on that note, even further, it's not for your benefit, but in the state government, federal government, and also electric utilities, it's difference of capital expenditures versus operational expenditures.
Right.
Big difference. For those of you who are not familiar, huge difference on how you budget, right?
Yes, we are, dependent on the revenue that's generated by the tax and the, taxes across the state of Texas, and that can change anytime. There's also a lot of grant money, and things can disappear from one session to the next. So you have to be really careful about how you're managing the different suppliers that you are, partnering with. Because the expectation is that, in 2 years, you may not have that funding anymore. And then it puts the state as well as the vendors in an interesting position on then what do you do next?
Right.
But, yeah.
Oh yeah, because it takes that initial big burden and spreads it out, which would be capitalized, to spread it out over this even across. So So on COVID, I always ask these last two questions on every one of these podcasts.
Okay.
How's COVID changed things for you and your group? I know you're just a few months in. You mentioned about the move to mobility, but how's it changed things for you?
Well, personally, it's interesting onboarding in this virtual environment.
Yeah.
You know, I have many direct reports as well as I have a management of a large outsourced team. There are several of them I still haven't seen on video for one reason or another, you know, and I don't push it. It's, you know, it's people's personal choice whether they want to do video or not. But it's interesting when you haven't, you know, you can't meet the people in person, but you haven't even seen what they look like other than maybe in a picture they pop up. So that's been very interesting for me. But I think many of my team members have been working together for a while. So not having that personal interaction is challenging, not just for me, but also for my team members, right? So they don't really know me in that physical level. There's definitely something to be said about, you know, having that physical in-person interaction. But I think, you know, we're getting into a groove. And I think as humans, we're a very adaptable species, right? We can figure out how to adapt. And I think overall it's business as usual. You know, it's just the social distancing and remembering to turn on your videos and taking ourselves off of mute that we have to remember to do. So I encourage everybody out there that if you're not doing video now, you know, people don't really judge you by what's going on your video. They really just want that interaction, you know, so that it's just not a voice on the other side of the phone or the computer. So I embrace video.
Me too. And it helps build a relationship because also we can have conversations at different levels if we have a better relationship or worse. You know, you can give me feedback and I take it different depending on our relationship. And I think that's the part people miss with video and the work from home. Yes, there's a lot of positives, but there's something to be said about those break room conversations and all that stuff.
Yeah. And I don't, I mean, you know, I generally get up in the morning and I don't put on my makeup or really fix my hair. You know, it's like I'm on video. I am who I am. So it's, you know, it's not any different than what I would be if I was in the office. So yeah, turn on your videos, people.
So last question, if you were given resources to invest in, just because you believe in this will give a great return on investment, what would you invest in?
Yeah. Well, my first thing right now, there's like I could probably list 10, but I would really love to have a business intelligence guru on my team. There's a lot of data and a lot of data sources, and the need to put that data in a simplified format, you know, using Power BI or Tableau or something to visualize it and make sound decisions. We have the data, we're working with it, but it is a bit cumbersome right now. And it would be nice to have somebody that had more expertise than I do or and other people on my team to just come in and be able to whip some stuff up. And I can just say, hey, I want this view, and this view, and they can do that for me. And I know there's people out there that can do that. So that it would be something I would love to have right now. And from a process standpoint, I would like to see more automation of our workflows. And then I would like to get deeper into driving agile methods into my team. I think there's a lot of opportunities there to drive some not just efficiencies, but also just better ways of working and being able to manage the workload in a more thoughtful process. So those are the two things that I would love right now if I could have them.
I was having the conversation last week with someone and saying that our world is turning to so much data that we are going to soon be overrun with data and need people to make sense of the data. Because what happened is we went from 0 to 60, no data, to too much data. Mm-hmm. And everybody has those vendors that give them these data lakes, these data oceans, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
But we got to make sense of it, because if I take an ITIL view where it talks about data and it's enriched, it becomes information, it's enriched, it becomes knowledge, and then the top is wisdom that we can make great decisions from.
Right.
We have to get from here to there.
Exactly. Yeah. Because right now I have all the data I need to make some of these decisions. It's just getting it into the right formats and manipulating it. And, that's a challenge for me because, that's not my expertise. There's probably some really good people in my organization that can do that. I'll have to vet them out. But they're also very busy too. So it would be really nice to have somebody on my team that could help with that.
Oh, yes. Data, just helping us make great decisions is something that's so widely needed in every organization, in every role. Kathy, it's great having you on the podcast. We thank you for coming on.
Yeah, Jeffrey, it's been a real pleasure and for having this opportunity. And, I would be happy to join again for any future discussions if you'll have me.
Hopefully next year. It's I can't believe we're already at the end.
Coming really fast.
Oh my, especially with the craziness. Sometimes some of this year's gone real slowly and some of it's been at warp speed. So
exactly. Yes.
I can't tell you which part's which, but that's a different story. Have a great day and thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
And we'll be right back with Jeffrey's closing thoughts. Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey back with closing thoughts. I thank you for being a part of what we're doing. It's been a tumultuous, it's been an anxious, it's been quite the year, hasn't it? And so us launching this podcast has been quite the endeavor. So we thank our audience for being a part of the journey with us and our numerous awesome guests. It has been quite the ride and I'm very thankful to all. So this week is special to many. If you are celebrating Christmas, I hope you have the best Christmas. It's merry, it's full of meaning. I hope it's great for you. If you're celebrating Hanukkah, I hope that's great for you. If you are celebrating any other festival or holiday this week, I hope it's awesome for you. And so we thank you for being a part of what we're doing. I wanted to just mention one thing from our conversation with Kathy. She was a great guest in terms of bringing IT asset management perspective onto this show. We enjoy all these conversations, but that's the strategic nature of IT asset management, ITAM. Whether it's the hardware side, understanding the hardware assets in our environment, the risk associated with each, all that sort of thing, put them in a life cycle, how we onboard, how we decommission. On the software side, think about the cost savings, all that potential audit risk that we have. And so together, it's very strategic, and it was instrumental in Kathy's career. And I wanted to make sure I pointed that out. And so whatever we can do to help you in your career, if you need something, give me a call, shoot me an email, LinkedIn message, whatever it is. And if service management leadership can help your organization, I hope that you'll reach out and let me know. I've been in the IT asset management space, this seems like a long time, but since 1994. And so I've seen a lot, and also in the service management space for a couple decades. And we would love to help you out in whatever obstacles, whatever journeys or transformations that are occupying your time, your thoughts. We'd love to be there for you. And so thank you very much for being with us, and have a great, great holiday season.